movingly from State House today, delivering his 57th Madaraka Day speech. And in his speech, he said that today and all future Madaraka Days, we will ponder the state of the Kenyan dream. And in pondering it, we must remember that Kenya is still a working in progress. Here is an excerpt of his speech.
I am already discerning a constitutional moment, and I want to be clear, not a moment to replace the 2010 Constitution, but one to improve on it. A moment that will right what we didn't get correct in 2010. But fundamentally, the constitutional moment that I discern is one that will bring an end to the senseless cycles of violence that we have experienced in every election cycle since 1992. And one that will deepen our democratic credentials as a country and lead to a much more inclusive society, which I do believe was the intention of the framers of the 2010 Constitution. Fellow Kenyans, we cannot reimagine our nationhood also without changing our political architecture. But we cannot change this architecture without re-engineering our Constitution. If we have done great things in the area of brick and mortar, the greater things that remain to be done have to do with our governance system, and we must not be afraid of changing the system if it does not serve our present and future purposes.
ODM leader Debarl Inea has warned Kenyans who are disregarding Ministry of Health guidelines in combating COVID-19, saying they're doing a disservice to the nation. In his Madaraka Day speech, Odinga has saluted health workers for risking their lives to lead the battle against the virus. Odinga has called on all Kenyans to work together in the reconstruction and rebuilding of the nation.
Let us reflect on patriotism, sacrifice, personal responsibility, dignity of our people, and respect for our nation as the goals in our battle against a disease that is determined to colonize us and turn our lives upside down. These ideals are going to be crucial not only as we battle COVID-19, but also in the gigantic task of reconstructing and rebuilding our nation. We know that most Kenyans have been adversely affected. Jobs have been lost. Homes have also been washed away through the floods. Locust is also a ravaging part of our country. We are going through a triple tragedy. But we also know that Kenyans' resilience and the mood to fight will eventually triumph.
And away from the Madaraka Day celebrations, Kenyans quarantined at the Kenya Medical Training College on their return from the United Arab Emirates have demanded the release of the COVID-19 test results after spending 17 days at the facility. The women marched through the halls waving branches demanding to know their status and the cause of the delay.
They marched through the halls of the Kenya Medical Training College determined to be as loud as possible in order to attract the attention of the decision makers. Their patients having worn thin, they said, after 17 days in quarantine, and their silence having been taken for weakness.
Tumenyamaza all those days, hakuna mtu anatuambia anything.
Kama singekuwa kelele, you wouldn't be here by
Exactly. That's the point. That's the point.
The women who are quarantined on their return from the United Arab Emirates accused the medics at the facility of dragging their feet, keeping them waiting for 5 days for the release of their COVID-19 test results.
Mulishukuru serikali sana kwa kurudisha nyinyi nyumbani.
No, we haven't got there. We paid for our flights. We paid for our flights.
In that time, they accused those managing the facility of exposing them to the virus by mixing them in with those newly admitted. They accused the facility's managers of adopting a high-handed attitude while their dependents suffered in their absence.
I want to go to feed my son. This is not what I tell you.
It's not the first time the authorities have been taken to task for their handling of those forcefully quarantined, resulting in some escapes.
Madaraka, they want to be liberated.
A widower and a father of two was on Friday forced to spend the night stranded with his wife's remains after what he says was a harrowing experience at the hands of the police. Anita Nkonge has more on this.
It was a journey already full of grief. For Charles Mwenda, a long journey lay ahead of him and his loved ones as they headed from Malindi to Meru County to bury his wife who had died of cancer. In accordance with the law, Charles made sure he got cleared for COVID-19 and acquired all the relevant travel permits before beginning the journey. However, trouble began once he had reached the Meru Tharaka Nithi border.
Meru County ndio nimeambiwa siwezi ingia kwenda kumzika mpendo wangu. Nimekuja, polisi wale walikuwa hapo wakatuambia mpaka mwili ushuke kurudishwe ama turudi ama tushukishe mwili. Mimi na watoto wangu na mama tunafanya nini tukuje tuzike mwili, lakini watoto wangu ni wadogo hawezi kuja na mama hawezi kuja kwa sababu kulikuwa usiku.
According to Charles, his family and friends were all forced to leave him and return to Malindi.
We did not find it necessary to allow the whole 3 people who had traveled from Malindi for the burial. However, we were able to provide transport for the body and facilitate one close relative of the deceased, and we facilitated the transportation of the body to Tigania West.
But, according to Charles, once at the Kianjai police station, the body was offloaded and along with Charles left stranded in the cold rain throughout the night. Charles says he pleaded with the police to at least drop the body at his home, only 5 kilometers from the police post, but they declined.
Tumenyeshewa kutoka hiyo time hiyo nilifika saa 8, nikanyeshewa mpaka saa 12 asubuhi. Ni mvua tu inaninyeshea na niko na mwili. Bibi yangu ako hapa na mimi niko hapa, nikabidi nikae nimwingishe chini ya lori at least. Ile chini ya lori nimwingisha pale katikati karibu na tank kukakajaa maji. Nikavuruta sanduku tena, nikakuja nikaweka hapo nyuma kidogo. Lori yenyewe ndio hiyo maji imejaa kwa hiyo lori. Sinaona lori imefunikiwa, imefunguliwa juu. Ikaingia ile maji ya mvua nikaanza kutumwagia maji tena.
Though he eventually managed to bury his wife, traumatized, he had only one request.
Kitu ambacho naomba isiye katendeka kwa mtu mwingine, kwa sababu yangu yameisha na nimemzika bibi yangu vizuri, lakini naomba isifanyike kitu kwa mtu mwingine.
Anita Nkonge, NTV.
Busia County Governor Sospita Ojamong wants the national government to urgently provide funding to his government, saying his county is carrying the burden of COVID-19 cases due to cross-border movement. Ojamong says out of the 42 reported cases of the coronavirus in the county, only 2 are residents of the county. The rest are truck drivers from other counties and countries such as Uganda and Democratic Republic of Congo. The governor says while the national government has deployed additional healthcare workers to test truck drivers at Malaba and Busia border points, the situation is getting worse since the county is reporting an average of 5 cases a day. Ojamong adds that the county's resources, both human and financial, have been overstretched and might soon be depleted due to the rise in the number of cases being handled at Alupe Isolation and Recovery Center.
Hii ni kama international border. Sababu hashughulikii maneno ya Busia peke yake kama county. Tunashughulikia watu ya Congo, tunashughulikia watu ya Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda. Magari zote ambazo zinatoka Mombasa kwingineko Jamhuri ya Kenya zote zinakuja, zina converge hapa Busia County. So sio kama county nyingine katikati huko. Ndio tunasema tunaitisha usaidizi. Bajeti ya county ya Busia ni ya watu ya Busia. Lakini wale wageni ambao wanakuja sasa tunawapeleka kule Alupe, Hawa ni sio watu yetu hapa, hatuna bajeti yao. Lazima tusaidiwe na serikali kuu na wale ambao wanaweza kutusaidia.
The global spread of COVID-19 continues to dampen the fortunes of the horticulture sector, with a declining demand disrupting supply chains. The local flower industry, whose contribution to the economy stood at 120 billion shillings in 2019, continued to be hit hard by the pandemic, with most cargo flights still grounded and export markets closed. Mount Elgon Orchards, a flower farm in Trans Nzoia County, says it has not only been forced to reduce its workforce, but also to destroy flowers left withering due to lack of market. Bob Anderson, the farm's managing director, said in the month of March only, the company lost 20 million shillings after European countries, while they export, closed down their markets.
But normally between 75 and 85 million roses a year. COVID-19 was a big shock to us. We lost 1 million roses that were in transit and ready for sale because there was the sudden shock that happened middle of March, affected us equally. And it's just when the going gets tough, the tough get going, as they say. But we just had to make do and find our way through the crisis.
Contractors and suppliers who have done business with Garissa County are calling on Senator Yusuf Haji to intervene and have them be paid the dues amounting to 1.9 billion shillings. 20 of them who have rendered services to the county during the previous regime allege they have been left in the dark when it comes to money owed to them. They now say the COVID-19 pandemic has made a bad situation worse. The quest to clear pending bills in different counties have been slow and protracted, even as businesses continue to suffer the consequences of extensively delayed payments.
We don't understand what the problem is. The governor of Garissa County is not intending to pay the pending bills for the contractors, even during this difficult period of COVID-19.
Garissa County Commissioner tulipatia barua malalamishi, hii mara nyingine RC tumepatiwa, Nairobi tumetumwa, yote tumesema. Sisi hatuna vita, we want our money. Tunataka pesa yetu tu peke yake.
On the international scene, Tropical Storm Amanda, the first named storm of the season in the Pacific, has wreaked havoc across several neighborhoods in El Salvador, leaving 9 people dead in her wake. Over 50 houses are said to have been completely destroyed, with another 200 being submerged under the floods.
It is a storm that has left many shocked by the magnitude of the destruction that Mother Nature has dealt them. Submerged cars speak of the volume of rainfall that hit the area, causing death and the disruption of life as they previously knew it to be. Emergency respondents, though quick to get to those hardest hit, their means of transport was compromised by the floods. Neighbors pulled together to bring those affected to safety. 9 people have reportedly died, among them a 10-year-old boy who was killed after his family house collapsed in Ciudad Delgado on the northeastern outskirts of the Salvadoran capital.
We were told of the collapse of a wall of a house. At first we were informed that the person had died, but now we're dealing with the fact that there are 2 more people inside the house.
Another death was registered in another area, whereby one woman was killed in a mudslide.
She practically died in my arms at the time. We couldn't do more to save her.
In Guatemala, officials said roads had been blocked by at least 5 landslides and some flooding had been reported, but no evacuations were underway.
Violent anti-racism protests continue in parts of the United States almost a week after the brutal arrest and subsequent death of George Floyd, an African-American citizen who died shortly after being kneeled on by a police officer. Many citizens from different cities in America have gathered to show their support against police brutality. Several protesters were arrested for violating curfew.
Cornered with their hands up, some protesters who were on the front line against the excruciating act that led to the death of George Floyd have been arrested by anti-riot police officers for defying curfew orders. Police fired tear gas outside the White House late Sunday as major U.S. cities were put under curfew to suppress rioting, as anti-racism protesters again took to the streets to voice fury at police brutality.
No one's escalating it. You are. You're escalating this!
Local U.S. leaders appealed to citizens to give constructive outlet to their rage over the death of an unarmed black man in Minneapolis, while nighttime curfews were imposed in cities.
The government needs to let them know that they have us barricaded inside. We want to go home.
Local U.S. leaders appealed to citizens to give constructive outlet to their rage over the death of an unarmed black man in Minneapolis, while nighttime curfews were imposed in cities including Washington, Los Angeles, and Houston. Violence has rocked many U.S. cities as citizens also took to the streets, looting stores and burning down buildings.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, least, man. I can breathe.
Floyd stopped breathing after Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin knelt on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. Chauvin has been charged with third-degree murder and is due to make his first appearance in court on Monday. 3 other officers with him have been fired, but for now face no charges.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has said a controversial ban on the sale of alcohol will be lifted for home consumption when the country moves into level 3 of the 5-tier COVID-19 lockdown next month. South Africans were prohibited from buying alcohol and cigarettes when the country went into one of the world's strictest lockdowns on March 27th. The booze ban was meant to prevent a spike in violence and reduce pressure on emergency wards as hospitals geared up to face a virus that has infected at least 22,583 people across the country and killed 429. South Africa started gradually easing confinement measures on May the 1st, allowing citizens to exercise outside or outdoors in the morning and some businesses to partially resume operations. Ramaphosa said the alert level will now be lowered from level 4 to 3 from today, with a differentiated approach to deal with coronavirus hotspots. More sectors of the economy will be able to reopen fully under strict health protocols and social distancing rules. A nighttime curfew will be lifted and outdoor exercise allowed at any time during the day. Public gatherings will remain prohibited, however, and certain high-risk economic activities such as restaurants, bars, and hairdressing salons will stay closed for the time being. To date, 842 COVID-19 patients are in hospital, including 128 in intensive care. A fast charter flight carrying Europeans to China following weeks of lockdown departed Germany's biggest air traffic hub, the Frankfurt airport, carrying around 200 workers and their families. All international arrivals in China are currently required to undergo COVID-19 tests and complete a mandatory quarantine, which means the passengers will have quite a lengthy ordeal before they reach their final destination. Earlier this week, China decided to loosen a cap on inbound flights that was set at 47 per week. But even with triple the arrivals showing up from June, the number remains a fraction of the roughly 9,000 a week handled by the country's airports before the pandemic, while Beijing arranged emergency flights to repatriate its citizens stranded abroad as the virus spread around the world. Demand has far outstripped supply. A second flight from Frankfurt to Shanghai is scheduled for June the 3rd. Let's buckle down to some sports where Manchester United have agreed to a deal to extend Odion Ighalo's loan until the end of January 2021, pending formal approval. Ighalo initially joined Manchester United in a deadline day move from Shanghai Shenhua in January and scored 4 times in 8 appearances in all competitions prior to the suspension of the English Premier League. The Nigerian current deal at Shenhua runs out in December 2022. And he will be expected to sign a contract offer until the end of 2024 worth £400,000 a week. Igalo will now miss the majority of the 2020 Chinese Super League season, which is scheduled to begin in June. Football and politics converged in Bundesliga's Sunday action as a number of footballers, among them Jadon Sancho, added their voice to worldwide protest against racism in the U.S. Protests have been held after George Floyd, an armed black man, died while being restrained by Minneapolis police. Sancho unveiled a Justice for George Floyd t-shirt after scoring for Borussia Dortmund in their 6-1 win against Paderborn. The Englishman, who scored his first professional hat-trick in the game, was shown a yellow card for the gesture. His teammate Achraf Hakimi also unveiled a similar t-shirt upon scoring the let-on. Ali Marcus Thuram took a knee after scoring for Borussia against Union Berlin. Bundesliga continues tonight with FC Cologne hosting RB Leipzig at 9:30. Staying in Germany, and Bayern Munich players have accepted a continued salary cut to last until the end of the season to help the Bundesliga defending champions navigate the coronavirus crisis. In April, the Bayern squad took 20% reduction in salary, though the specification of this latest development have not been made public. Bayern sits 7 points clear of second-placed Borussia Dortmund at the top of Bundesliga with 6 games remaining as they look set to win a record-extending 8th straight title. The German top-flight season is scheduled to end on June 27th, although Bayern, who is still in the Champions League, could potentially also be in the German Cup final on July the 4th. That does it for now. Thank you for your valued company. My name is Debarl Inea.